He abandoned her at the altar. Years later, she's the judge in his divorce. Barry had once thought he was on the cusp of everything he ever wanted, a beautiful, devoted woman and a future filled with promise. But instead of moving forward, he froze. Standing at the altar, Barry had felt the gravity of commitment tighten around him like a vice. He couldn't explain why his legs refused to move down that aisle, why his mouth refused to speak those sacred words. In the end, he did the unthinkable. He left Lena standing there, stunned and heartbroken. He didn't look back, leaving her alone in her dress, the guests murmuring, and her dream of forever shattered. But before we dive into what happens next, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from today? Drop a comment below. Years rolled by, and Barry moved on, or so he thought. He had married someone else, thinking he'd finally found the right fit. But his life with Paula became increasingly turbulent, their affection lost in an avalanche of fights and resentments. Paula's high standards clashed with his carefree ways, and the distance between them grew until they were only two strangers sharing a house. When he finally filed for divorce, Barry wasn't prepared for the twist fate had in store. His heart skipped a beat as he entered the courtroom and saw her, Judge Lena Martin, once the love of his life, now the arbiter of his divorce. Lena's transformation was striking. She was poised, authoritative, and commanded the room with an air of elegance. In her crisp judge's robes, she was powerful, a far cry from the woman he had left at the altar. Lena didn't let her surprise show. She had long since made peace with the past, or so she told herself. Years of burying herself in her career had taught her how to mask her feelings behind a facade of professionalism. But as she scanned the case file, memories seeped through. How ironic, she thought, that Barry had come full circle, needing her judgment in the one area where he had once failed her. With meticulous care, Lena examined the case details. Paula wanted a significant share of Barry's business, spousal support, and the house. Barry's financials revealed he had become quite successful since they'd parted ways, and the implications for him were severe. Yet as much as she recognized the temptation for revenge, Lena was bound by duty to uphold the law. But she also knew the law well enough to ensure Barry faced the consequences of his past choices. As the proceedings began, Lena addressed Barry and Paula with cool professionalism. Barry avoided her gaze, his discomfort evident. Lena started with a deep inquiry into Barry's financial history and assets, demanding transparency in his accounting practices and personal expenditures. Barry had always been cavalier with his money, and it showed in some questionable expenses, things he'd written off to minimize support payments. She caught every one of them. Over the course of the trial, Barry saw that Lena was not simply following protocol. She was thorough, unrelenting, and determined to make sure Paula got what she deserved. Lena focused on highlighting Barry's lavish lifestyle, scrutinizing every claim and counterclaim until his defenses unraveled. Lena was carving out justice not just for Paula, but for herself, in a sense. She was exacting a kind of retribution, not through anger or pettiness, but through the exacting discipline of the law. Paula's attorney seized on the opportunity, backing Lena's line of questioning, emboldened by the support of a judge who was evidently on his client's side. Soon, Barry found himself cornered, forced to agree to a settlement far more substantial than he had anticipated. He watched helplessly as the case turned against him, Lena making sure every clause of the divorce decree reflected Paula's best interests. In the end, the judgment was delivered with a measured tone that only Lena could have mastered. Barry would lose the house, half his business profits, and a hefty amount in alimony. He realized the weight of what he'd done, not just to Paula but to Lena, who had become the person who would define his downfall. After the ruling, Barry dared to approach her, catching her just before she left the courtroom. "Lena," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. The years had not dulled his regret, and he knew the pain he'd caused would never fully heal. "I know I don't deserve it, but I hope you can forgive me." Lena turned to him, her face impassive, yet her eyes held a glimmer of the woman he once knew. "I made peace with what happened a long time ago, Barry. The law isn't about forgiveness. It's about justice, and today, you got what you earned." Her words were final, a cold echo that left Barry to ponder his choices as she walked away, a testament to the justice she'd served without compromising her integrity. Barry left that courtroom, his head heavy, his world irrevocably changed. As for Lena, she finally felt the closure she had long awaited, justice delivered not by vengeance but by the unwavering hand of the law. Barry's life unraveled even more rapidly after the court ruling. He struggled with the financial burden imposed by the divorce settlement and felt the weight of losing half of everything he'd built. Old friends drifted away, and he found himself isolated, a man haunted by his past mistakes. Months went by. One day he received an invitation to a legal networking event through an old business acquaintance. Barry hadn't attended a formal event since his divorce, but he figured he had nothing left to lose. He arrived, blending into the crowd, and he couldn't help but feel out of place among the polished, successful attorneys and judges. Toward the evening, Barry spotted Lena across the room, surrounded by colleagues. She radiated confidence and warmth, her laugh reaching him even from a distance. For a moment, he was transported back to the days when they'd shared dreams and plans together, days before his actions had shattered it all. Unexpectedly, Lena noticed him. She excused herself from her group and approached him, her expression unreadable but not unkind. "Barry," she said with a slight nod, acknowledging him without bitterness. "Lena," he replied, managing a weak smile. "I didn't expect to see you here." They stood in a brief silence, years of unresolved emotions hovering between them. Finally, Barry cleared his throat, his voice tentative. "Look, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I don't expect anything from you. But losing everything has made me realize just how much I took for granted, and how much I lost when I lost you." Lena listened without interrupting, her gaze softening. She was no longer the same woman who had been left at the altar, nor was she the judge who had issued his divorce ruling. She was someone who had grown beyond him, beyond the pain he had caused. "Barry," she began, choosing her words carefully, "life is complex, and the law isn't meant to fix personal pain. What I went through when you left me, well, it pushed me to become stronger, to find a purpose outside of anyone else. For that, in a strange way, I owe you something. You taught me the importance of knowing my own worth." He looked down, feeling both humbled and saddened. "I know I can't change the past, but I hope I can change who I am from here on out. Watching you in court made me see a different kind of strength. I want to find that in myself, too." She gave him a faint smile. "That's something only you can do, Barry. But it's possible. Pain can break us or it can transform us. The choice is always ours." The words lingered, a subtle offering of closure. As Lena excused herself to rejoin her group, Barry watched her walk away, realizing that the story he'd once hoped to rewrite was already complete. He understood that Lena wasn't his to win back or seek validation from. She had become a reminder of his own capacity for change. For the first time, he felt a strange sense of peace. In the weeks that followed, Barry began rebuilding his life with a renewed purpose, dedicating himself to mentoring young entrepreneurs and finding ways to give back to his community. Lena's words became his guide, an anchor in his journey of self-discovery. And though they never met again, Lena's presence remained, a quiet testament to the power of growth and the unbreakable bond between justice and grace. Leave a comment if you enjoyed this story. It doesn't cost you anything, and you'll make me very happy. Thank you, and I look forward to your like.